Hello friends, Dr. Larry Mitnaul, your friendly neighborhood child and adult psychiatrist, and I'm really excited to be with you to talk to you about attachment, right? Attachment, which in my view is probably the most important theme of parent-child relationships, relationship within the home in general. Actually, maybe all relationships, if I'm being honest. And so I'm excited to bring this to you. So in today's episode, we'll talk about what we mean by attachment and what that looks like throughout the developmental spectrum. We'll talk about its importance to and maybe a tidbit of history. And then we'll end with something you can start doing today to attach a little bit better to the most important people in your life. So you won't want to miss it. Stay tuned. But before we get into the theme, I want you to imagine two scenarios. One scenario is a child, a baby, who's awakening in their crib, maybe in the wee hours of the morning, and looks around the room because there's enough light to notice there's no one else there with them, right? So how might that baby react? Well, often they might react with a bellowing cry, right? Or a sob. So that's scenario number one. All right, sorry to leave you with such a sad one, but I promise we're gonna come and talk about it a little bit more. The second scenario I want you to imagine is a teenager who's at home, and maybe we're watching them in the midst of a confrontation, and maybe not a big confrontation, but where a dad is talking to a child and saying, "Hey, you didn't do the chores that you're obligated to do, within the family." And the teenager may have a litany of reasons why that wasn't able to be accomplished. But instead of maybe listing those things or them having a conversation about it, maybe this teenager is just so upset that they say something like, "You just don't understand me. You don't know me, Dad. You don't know what's going on. You don't know what I'm thinking about." And maybe they leave or kind of part ways and off with a huff, and the door slams. All right. What connects those two scenarios, right? So the baby in the crib and the teenager who's really feeling frustrated. Attachment. Right? One of the lenses that we could use to think about both of these relationships is attachment and how connected they feel to their primary caregiver, or the lack or absence of connection that they might feel in that moment. Now, again, those who heard the scenario, I don't want you worrying that these things will naturally tend towards PTSD. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that our rootedness, our connection to one another is so critical and vital that it's something that you should be aware of, because I think it'll really make a difference in helping you to parent in the way that you want to. So often when people think about attachment theory or attachment parenting, if you know a little bit of the history, you might be thinking about the British psychologist John Bowlby, who gave us the term really and developed an attachment theory. And then many others have come along the way to help flesh that out a little bit more. Most notably, Mary Ainsworth, a psychologist whose work in the 1970s, talked about different forms of attachment and style. So the way that we'll start is thinking about a plant and its rootedness, right? So you can imagine that a plant who has a superficial root system is adhered to the earth. Yes. I mean, is that connection true? Yes, it is. But you can imagine that when the rains come and strong winds blow, the thing that's rooted superficially, has a good chance of being knocked down or ripped out or pulled away, right? Or if it's trampled, right? It might be harder for that thing to survive. Now, by contrast, think about something with a really extensive, heavy, deep-rooted system, right? So maybe you're thinking of the mighty oak kind of springs to mind. Now, can that thing be knocked down? Well, sure, but it's going to take a lot more to do that. Right? It might take a bulldozer and several chainsaws and tornado grade weather to uproot that thing, or maybe just age and time. But still, it's a very rooted thing. So in thinking about human connections, right, and thinking about how we're connected to our children, we want the deep, abiding root system. We don't want the superficial, tenuous thing that can easily be knocked down. And it turns out that if our children are well tuned and deeply rooted within their family system, that often helps their future development, right? And so Bowlby was one of the early ones to posit that this secure base, this secure foundation of attachment is what allows young kids to feel safe to explore. And so you've probably all witnessed this. You've been at the barbecue or the picnic or the, or the get together where you're witnessing the young child who's in a new space and seeing people for the first time that maybe they've not met or that they're not familiar with. And so they're clinging to the leg of their mom or dad, and then maybe they'll explore a little bit. But once they recognize that, they're farther than they want to be, or it takes a few more steps to get back to them, then maybe they come back, right, and attach. And then you watch them kind of survey. And often, if they're able to do it, right, if they feel that attachment is secure, they know where their parent is, they start to venture further and further away. All right, so that's the theme. That's the overall kind of organizational strategy. So here's where sometimes our imaginations fall a little bit short. We often think about attachment, and certainly Bowlby wrote primarily about attachment in the early years, right? So typically he's thinking and writing about, from birth to 2.5 years old. It turns out that attachment is actually really important and dynamic, and maybe just as dynamic in the middle school, high school years as well. That attachment is really a great lens for also thinking about how we connect to our older children. So when thinking about the teenager who sometimes is acting oppositional, is being really defiant and maybe rejecting our recommendations for how they should carry themselves or their contributions in the home. I mean, we can look at their behavior, but we also may be looking at the strength of our connection together, and which is great news, because enhancing that strength of connection, enhancing that attunement to one another can really be part of the way, and maybe the bulk of the way, of us getting through this together in a loving way that helps us to thrive as parents and to help our children thrive. The beauty of a strong attachment is that when done well, this connection brings out the beauty and strengths of both sides. So when we are connected well with our child, it makes us a better parent. Our observation, our patience, our ability to be present in the moment with them allows us and stirs up within us as parents an opportunity to attach in a really strong way. And likewise, our kids that are attuned and attracted and attached to us also are looking for not only us as a sense of security, but also looking towards the things that we recommend for them as ways to open up doors to help them to flourish. Plants that are oriented towards the sun, right? It appears that they're reaching for it and they're nourished by it in its gaze. And so that's part of this dance, this really beautiful dance, that if our eyes are focused on attachment, we can really bring out the best in our families. So this is the first in the series. I'll be talking more about different features and maybe ways to think about or enhance your attachment at home. And so in order to help us to do that, feel free to like, subscribe, follow, click the notifications as well so you don't miss any part of this series, because I think it really will be meaningful to you. So I'll leave you with a little piece of homework today to give a try in your own life. So I want you to look for a time in your day where maybe you're in action, looking at your phone, or your teenager's playing the video game, or the child's playing blocks in the other room while, maybe you're handling something in a different room. And I want you to look for those moments and think, is there a time, is there space here for us to connect? For us to, instead of being oriented towards the things that we have to get done, is there an opportunity here for us to orient towards each other, even if it's for 5, 10, 15 minutes of the day, okay? And then I want you to report back. So add to the comments what that was like when you were intentional about turning a moment that could have been life lived in parallel to be oriented towards one another. Do that and you're already on your way to attaching better. Thank you, my friends, for watching. As always, take good care, be well, and stay tuned.